Leslie O. of the Hunchback of Notre Dame. The costume was perfect, down to the careful. Beauty is a dangerous gift, especially when disaster. I thought it was just a coincidence. He was standing near the entrance to the haunted mansion when we always reappeared a few steps away. Let's go to another section, I say, enough to make the people around him look up. Seconds later, Leslie burst out, pale, shaking him to the ground, punching him and screaming obscenities. Blood splattered his chin. People were screaming. Now security was running, trying to get me out of the way. I remember a guard yelled. Not like a human laugh, but an echo from a hollow place, much deeper than his chest. She rested her head on my trembling shoulder. He wasn't normal, she whispered, gasped. Jamie, step back. We saw that man again, that same face, the theme parks, restaurants and shopping malls. Police say Hale often disguised himself as a character or Hale reportedly told investigators he admired Judge Claude Frello, claiming he was misunderstood in his own words. He wasn't a demon, he was worse. He was real. A wish list on the back of her school notebook I saw going to Disneyland, scribbling at the top, so I decided to go. For her it was a sunny after 12 p.m. when I arrived, and everything was exactly as she had imagined. Music played, children laughed, balloons floated in the sky, and I wandered aimlessly. Every smile I saw reminded me, deliberately blending into the crowd. Every time the girl turned around, he looked away, pretending to take pictures, or were distracted, trying to calm the baby down. It's none of my business. I thought to myself, certain that the man had bad intentions before he disappeared. I saw her face, eyes wide open. I didn't even think about it. I just jostled people for hours on end. Arriving at I could no longer stand still. I threw myself at this monster. The man turned around, surprised, just as I hit her. We both hit the ground hard. I don't remember my words, just the saying. I was shaking, covered in sweat and dust. My hands were shaking so hard that I had to press them against my... I just knelt down to keep up with him. You're safe now. I managed to articulate. She suddenly squeezed Emily. When the police took the man away, one of the officers tapped me on the shoulder. You did well, son. I felt it there in the laughter of the children, in the breeze that carried the smell of cotton candy. He back at him. I still get chills when I think of that day. It was supposed to be magic. A perfect little after that hour. The sky was soft and golden, the traffic flowing. I remember thinking how good it was to give. His suit was dirty and torn. She said, "You can take me." I forced a small smile. "I'm sorry. We're in a hurry. I can't," before I could finish. The back door slammed open. I spun, the tires screeching on gravel and roots. The road disappeared behind us. We were surrounded by tall and silent trees. Macy's cried to the woods until we saw a rotten cabin, leaning on its side, covered with ivy. Crushing the accelerator, the car leapt forward. The woman's arm hit the opening door and she staggered backward. I didn't look. I just drove. Into the back. But here was curled up, crying, hysterically with glass in her hair, but someone stoned, unstable. But when I told them about the costume, how she seemed to know this hidden dirt road, they just looked at each other without. When I reached the spot where I'd first seen it, something caught my eye. Minnie Mouse's red ears lay in the dirt by the shoulder, half buried, the same kind mace, that flat, emotionless voice that says, "Are you going to Disneyland?" But here is bigger now. We haven't been back to Disneyland yet. She doesn't even want to go. She says it's no lost town. But my cousin Evan acted like he knew it by heart and had been praising this fair for days. On Halloween, our trinket stands, cart rides in fake cemeteries, and crazy costumes. Evan quickly ditched me to pick up Gick and Cracked, with a smile painted far too wide. Her pale blue eyes seemed to count every time I blinked. Stepping back, he didn't add anything. Just stand there, holding out this disgusting candy. He used to be the mascot of a syrup factory that closed. You mentioned it to Evan. He laughed and shrugged. There, I grabbed Evan's forehead. Blood immediately ran down her face, mixing with the white makeup. Friendo didn't scream or grimace. He didn't even touch the wound. He stared at us for a few seconds, letting the blood soak his clothes before he melted. By midnight, the party was over. Families were gone, leaving teens and drunken adults. It echoed in the field, somewhere behind us. Did you hear that? Just whisper. Evan stopped walking. The laughter came closer. We turned and I saw a shape in the fog. Laughter intensified. He seemed to enjoy this situation. I could hear his horrible singing anymore. He just watched the fog envelop him as if he were part of it. We ran to my grandparents' house, locked up, and spent the night in the living room, jumping at the slightest noise. Grandfather found us in the morning. Never celebrate Halloween at Granger Hollow again, because he dragged me to that Halloween party against my will, knowing that I hated parties and crowds and all that cinema. Julia will be there, he said with a wink as he approached. My heart sank. Why are you telling me this now? Come on, man, she's cute out the good moon. This girl was completely crazy, but I couldn't let her run my life. Could be a wig with lipstick smeared at the corner. I tried to ignore him, but I could feel his moving, muttering to themselves. I didn't stay. Kyle, the whole eye, like ink, had been poured into it. We have to finish that. What are you doing there? She broke it in two, still singing. The air got thick. You're in a normal run. It was a strange rhythm, like she was 10 feet away, with this awful stretched smile. Eric, you can't run away from her body mingling with mine before she caught me. I dug my elbow into his ribs. Strong. I felt him recoil. His sidewalk around 3:00 a.m. with a severe head injury. At the hospital, remember me. Maybe the nightmare was finally over. I never to the ground. The legend, who claimed that. Other times, pictures of American fists or guns with creepy captions. You couldn't them in disguise. Music blaring, smell of weed. Alcohol everywhere. We were hanging out by the bars. Preston Billy, one of the kingpins, he grabbed my buddy's arm. When we knocked my buddy to the ground, yelling at him for ignoring them. My brother tried to calm things down, but felt like hours. Then I heard one of them say, "He's KO." Not a movement. My hands were shaking when I called for help. I stood there, his head on my lap, crying, "They're so wrong." The day after she died, I received a snap. What was attacked at a Halloween party. Preston, a sophomore and basketball player, was there with his was knocked out by Talon Renner. Then others beat him up before fleeing. Witnesses saw Jacob Messner, 17 Taylor Sherman, 19 Talon Reiner, 17 dedicated to building. The average age of the players was 15. It made me laugh because we only knew each other online. Fit from state tuition. His plan, leaving alone getting by financially. After he told me that he had already bought his plane tickets to visit my high school. Him taking a tour of my high school, filming and taking pictures, probably in the hope that I would see. Of the online group never found his behavior odd. I felt like I was the only one who saw something. I saw a picture of him posing in front of the libraries at my university with this caption, "Transferring me here is clearly the right plan." people who kept telling me it wasn't that bad.
The horrific acts that followed at dawn.
He hasn't contacted me since, but that doesn't mean...
By my Egyptian origins, he helped me a lot in my career.
Someone I could confide in.
Its wild and free side, colorful parties.
I was very lonely at the time and hadn't had down. We went to the movies, we swam, we caught back.
And told me that he was my natural state.
When I asked him for proof, he refused.
He didn't even know the real
Joshua was texting me like, if you were real. I had found a super guild that raided twice a week. Everything was going very well. He would interrupt our raids by landing on the vocal and blasting the music. He got kicked out him again, but I had forgotten one crucial detail. He knew where I lived. I had been avoiding him. Room overlooks a small balcony that is easy to climb. Thanks to the legend, the window. He tried to open it. In vain. He just stood there looking into my... I heard him come back down at full speed. At first she thought I had invited her. Ever you are, Joshua. I hope you found help and moved on, because you were to surprise me when I got a Skype call while browsing Facebook. What surprised me, however, my headphones.
Sex to manipulate and steal from men after a disturbing trial, including testing...
Don't walk away from me. Then I started to be a friend trying to scare me. I have to say it worked. I lacked my dark wallpaper. There wasn't enough light in the room to discern anything. Online. And above all, I wasn't going to let shady guys force me to hide. They sometimes get DMs that are not clear. My favorite game is Dead by Daylight for sounds like really to the point that I couldn't even go see this with my Stephen King fanboy friend. My mother loves to... He played the clown vocal role with a creepy once while stalking. See, he starts writing a message. The writing he erased, I preferred not to know. The next day, we give them another game. Somebody says, hey, the clown guppy, and that night he didn't let go of me before.
Trapped in my home
He ignored them.
I no longer police uniform, pretending to be a loving father. I watched him sized about eating them over the course of
Horrible,
the evening.
but
I couldn't
impossible
take it
to
anymore.
ignore. I
The
remember
tension in
some...
his twisted menu.
I'm not sure I'll hunt you down in the game, and in real life you'll beg to die. Fine experience I've ever had online.
Sick and twisted.
So,
It
a
was
piece
there.
of
I'll
advice,
never,
especially if you're a... Sometimes some stories stood out without
Even
any
further.
supernatural elements, just realistic. His mother sometimes went
Family,
out with
everything
men,
was blown
hoping to
pieces.
find the father in
Thanksgiving-
Londo. Nothing strange. It was a ground floor apartment. No need to rush to a neighbor's house screaming and banging on the door. Fortunately, they let him in. My God. After that, they spent a week at Grandma's. What makes my blood run cold is thinking about that exact moment. The obsessed guy. This story disturbed me enough to leave the server. Sometimes, it's looked up from her mob. Are you ordering something or what? He ignored her completely. Bought you something. He held out the doll and I saw it clearly now. The wool hair was exactly the same stone on her fabric nose. Arya's going to get Dave, I said in a strangled voice. Arya's not moving, is she? Almost gave out. Instead of stuffing, the doll was filled with blood-soaked spit to pieces. How easy it is. He stabbed her again and again. Each shot sent more red splatterings. He lifted the severed head, its butt and eyes still fixed, and brought it close to her face. Mahana, he murmured as he kissed her. Dave burst through the kitchen door with Arya behind him. What did they can't keep me away? He clutched the doll's head against him, staining his wish red. Maybe even followed me home at night. His name was Marcus Hendrick. The worst part is knowing he's still out there in a cell 40 minutes outside Cartagena, was reached via a rough dirt road, so motionless that I doubted he was even breathing. But I didn't. Once in smock and lying on the operating table, put a hand over my mouth while the man in the pig mask looked for something. I was Ramirez savagely. I had cut deep into his arm. I then killed off about 10 years crouching in a corner. She was terrified. I asked her what she was doing. Okay? The doctor said my foster parents took money to send me here. His voice gaped this hell. I heard them coming through the door. My eyes looked everywhere, looking for a inside stank of rust and bleach, hidden, shivering under the bloody rags. I called her and she raised her head, the emergency door, and ran to the road until the lights disappeared behind us. There. Frankly, I don't regret going 100k Los Bulikemich during our company's charity game. I heard them agreeing to things I didn't understand. But I remember the kiss and could feel and hear everything. Hand me the little scalpel, but my body wouldn't respond. I could feel the burning on my skin, the tearing sound, and how much longer? 2 more hours? I couldn't make any sound. Then my finger twitched, and my hand moved abruptly. But I was struggling violently. She's awake, her assistant grabbed. You need to calm down. I crawled toward the door, and while I was struggling, my coat was soaked with blood. My face. I heard Dr. Valdez yell that I had signed the consent form. Thousands of photos of me edited with AI filters, unlike my real face, why I broke up with him. But I never imagined he'd be so crazy. The anesthesiologist had 6 months of corrective surgery to repair the damage. Had always been the popular girl in our school, showing off her gorgeous blonde hair. So when she disappeared for 2 weeks over winter break, the rumors began. Immediately, things escalated when a teacher asked him to take off his glasses and mask. Reagan's entire the Barbie. Someone had done a TikTok comparing these cheerleaders to master a new choreography. I finished around 5:10, 07:30, when all the school premises were empty. Reagan, you make fun of other people's misery, don't you, Natalia? She came out from behind. Eyes were completely abnormal, red and swollen, as if a blood vessel had burst in his head. His nose was so weird I had trouble recognizing Reagan. His lips. So if I'm a monster, I might as well act like one. She lunged at me and I barely managed to dodge. The scissors. I reached the door, but it was locked. She grabbed my hair and pulled me back. She dragged me to the ground, and I saw the scissors rise towards my face. I raised my arm and the blade pierced it. Suddenly I felt it sway and quickly called for help, ensuring my safety. Law enforcement and paramedics shutdown was caused by harassment triggering a seizure. In addition, there were also failed surgeries. To the 8th grade, we all knew about each other who had repeated. Which parents divorce? Best. My parents trusted me. Maybe too much. By the 13 pizzas and peace jokes, until one of us ended up crying or throwing up. Always the same reassuring decor of the Sam. Their house was in the seedy part of the neighborhood, where the roads weren't even nothing and didn't care what people thought of him. For a bunch of 12-year-olds, it was exciting. A direct ticket to Non's house, or rather the shack looked tired, sagging, almost abandoned. Lawn chairs dented in front of beer cans, crushed is protruding, pink so thin you could see through it. Nobuha. Half the boys turned. No one protested. We didn't want to pass for babies. At first it was the blast. Music blaring revealed a room, not a movie, a real room. And very quickly we understood, it was her mother naked, stuff that smelled like latex, fronts that he swung around. A boy grabbed them and then let go like it was hot. The other, when it was my turn. Then a small snake came out of an aquarium and ended up and left his house without a word. The night outside seemed immense. I didn't run. Anything, but I couldn't put into words Sam's look, Mac's empty laugh. The next day the school and the police talked about it again, but neither of us came out unscathed. I changed that night. I learned to lock my doors, listen to the sound of locks, stay away from parties and nights out. A part of me died that night, but another was born. More suspicious, more to one sleepover in my entire life. One and knew how to spit straight into the sky at 250 meters and then catch his drool in his mouth. That kind of kid we thought was cool, but we did seemed electric, different. So when he handed out invitation, Tommy lives on the edge of town, in a spanking house, with 4 pickups in front and 2 rotten boats in the yard, not close to seeing the water again. Were adults, friends, relatives, I imagine, drinking, smoking and laughing in the living room. A rusty trampoline, a crooked foot that leaned up to a stage, a plywood plate and placed on cinder blocks. There was a shirtless vest underneath it. A drunk guy at the battalion grilled hot dogs on the front porch. It was insane, and yet it spread out on a washing machine like a poker table. Tommy's father, Tyler, blew. We shouldn't get out of here. We didn't have time. Shane threw his dart, missed the target. Coach came out screaming to stop everything. A raspy voice, saddle and vinegar. I saw brass and a pile of white powder. I thought it was this. And he said to Cody Anderson. Cody, retreating cold, free, was finishing his round the garage, holding our breath. I could already feel the air changing, this heavy that there's. One of the musicians tackled the gunman and managed to snatch the gun from. They gathered us on the sidewalk. Oh yes, don't move. The neighbors were out talking to Dad, got handcuffed and loaded up. Shane left in the ambulance. Cost wanted to forget. No way. My mother told me at school that I'm not. My wife and I were trying stage, we thought, and everything he did was gating in places where they wouldn't be found right away, or by crushing them on for days on this subject. But as he grew up, he became more them. When he was 10, he stabbed me pretty hard in the hip and butt. I see didn't work and drugs didn't do anything. Nothing fucking works. It was like a poisonous cloud of. We have considered terminating a pregnancy, but at first, it is not so easy to do nowadays. And secondly, my wife fighting. She obviously had no teeth, but you could see that she was just trying to eat and not rip off her mother's breast. After 4 months, she was doing her nights. She was happy, completely normal. I can't describe the relief and happiness we both felt. I have no words for it. That's when I believe I started to drift away from my son. Before, no matter what mistakes I may have made, I was always trying to do the best I could for my son. I am convinced I tried to help him, love him and take care of him. I really tried, but when my oldest daughter, my wife and myself instinctively turned to her, she became ours. Enter not out of malice, but because she was easier to live with. She was so happy and sweet. Every moment I spent with her, we couldn't help ourselves. I don't have a better explanation than that. My son had nothing to do with my wife's pregnancy. I really don't know if he understood what was going on. But when we brought our daughter home, he started acting even worse. I didn't think it was possible, but it seems to have gone up a notch. At that time he was about 17. We were all arguing. Every day, usually after an argument, he stormed out of the house and disappeared for hours or returned the next morning. Arguments because it allowed him to get away from us for a while.
Before she passed away,
after the birth of our daughter, my relationship with my son almost completely disappeared. Our only real interaction with him, she didn't feel anything at that time. If our son walked into the same room as her, she would just stop what she was in. To do it and start screaming, "Get out of my sight," until he leaves. He started spending more and more time out of the house, which was a blessing for us. I had no idea what he was doing out there. We were just glad it wasn't inflicted on us as a result of our son's behavior. We had invested heavily in locks placed throughout the house. All the thin, cheap interior doors have been replaced by thick, dense wooden doors that cannot be pushed in and equipped with locks, including my wife and I. Keys. I know this may sound extreme, but locks and heavy doors were the best way we could find to create a safe space to protect us from it. Again, before I got too many messages, I wasn't locking my son in his room like some kind of prisoner. He had a free field in the house and could come and go as he pleased. My wife and I locked ourselves in rooms to protect ourselves from him. In fact, We were prisoners in our own home. On the day in question, I had a fight with my son in the morning. My wife and I were enjoying a little and quiet in the kitchen while our daughter slept. All of a sudden, my daughter started crying. Any parent with young children can tell you, you get used to your child's crying and you can guess after a while what he needs. It cries differently when they are hungry, if they need to be changed, or if they are just restless and want to be rocked. Babies can communicate quite well before they talk. This scream, however, was none of that. It was a cry of terror. The second we heard it, my wife and I got up from our chairs and ran. The door was locked, of course, and it took a few seconds to find the right key and open it. My son was in the room. We were living in a bungalow, and that bastard had climbed through the window to get to her. He was standing over his crib with a meat knife in his hand. I have no idea where he got it. He wasn't one of ours. We controlled our knives very carefully and always kept them in locked drawers. I think he may have taken it from one of our neighbors. He had already punctured her skin twice, once on her stomach, the other on her arm. I could see blood when I entered the room. He was rubbing the back of the knife over his face. No cut. He seemed to tease her as she screamed. He looked up at us and smiled. Before I knew what I was doing, I was already running to get between them. I didn't think, I just moved instinctively. Despite that, my wife arrived before me. It was like in a time-lapse movie. She reached out to our son and released her hand when she saw the knife across the room, then pushed it with all her weight. It flew out of the crib and bounced against the wall. I held my daughter while my wife scanned us. I could see her trembling, almost convulsing. I remember the smell of the room, the sound of my daughter screaming and moaning, the look of my son standing there empty. Nothing at all like dead. There was nothing in his eyes. Not the slightest emotion. He looked like an alien to me. I watched my wife take a step towards him. I could have reached out and stopped him, but I didn't. She took another step closer to him. Again, I could have stopped him, but I didn't. So far, could you imagine that my wife was a typical woman, small in stature, sensitive and delicate? That's not the case. My wife is admittedly a small size, but she is not sensitive or delicate and never has been since I've known her since she was a teenager. My wife is a boxer, MMA. Didn't exist at the time, but karate and boxing were very popular at the time, and my wife was a very talented amateur. She weighed a little under 60 kilos and had a lot of muscle, and she knew how to hit. At the time, I was 30 kilos heavier than her, and I have no doubt that in a real fight between her and me, she would have beaten me to a pulp. Neither of us would have raised a hand in anger over our son before, but something broke in her that day. All those years of anger, pain, grief, and frustration erupted when she hit him. His head snapped back abruptly, and blood began to flow from his nose. He barely reacted. He just looked at him with this shocked expression, as if he didn't know how to react to what had just happened. She waited a second, then hit him again. I could have reached out to stop her. I could have dragged her out of the room, taken her away, and calmed her down, but I didn't. I stood there and watched her as she began to systematically pulp him into mush. Every time he raised his body, his head, his body, over and over again, he started screaming, crying, screaming for her to stop. It was the most sincere reaction he had ever had in his entire life, but she didn't stop. I watched it, increased its course, hitting harder and faster, working it like a punching bag. He tried LA, hit back, but she dodged it easily. She was on autopilot and reacted like training. I stood there watching the scene for a few minutes, then turned my back on them. I got my daughter out of the room, took her into the kitchen and gave her a bath in the sink. I discovered that he had cut her a third time on the sole of her foot, but all the cuts remained superficial. I cleaned her up and held her until she calmed down. Then I put bandages on his wounds in our room. I could hear my son screaming and insulting my wife horribly, telling her he was going to cut off her head and sodomize her corpse. After a while, I didn't hear him say anything. I didn't even hear him scream. I guess he must have been knocked out, but I could still hear my wife hitting him. It lasted a very long time, long enough for my daughter to fall asleep in my arms. I sat at the kitchen table waiting for my wife to finish. Finally, she came out and sat across from me. His hands were swollen and red, his face and arms covered in blood, his chest heaving. We looked at each other without saying anything.
But behind her
After a
soft
while I
voice
asked
and
him,
gentle
"Is he
smile
dead?" She
hid
looked
a
at me and
deeply
said, "I hope
disturbed
so."
mind.
I nodded, and
Her
that was all
obsession
there
turns
was to
deadly
say
when
on the
love isn't
subject.
returned.
I totally understood
Her
how
laugh
she was
becomes
feeling, and I
unhinged.
agreed with you. I
Her
didn't
eyes
know
turn
what to
cold,
do, so we just
and her
sat and
kindness
waited in silence.
becomes a trap.
My wife
She was
obviously
beautiful,
started crying
kind,
and went to
and
take a
innocent.
shower. I
The
stood
type
there
of person
holding
you'd
our
never
daughter in
suspect.
my arms from the
Hid a
bedroom.
deeply
Turns out
disturbed
my
mind.
son wasn't dead. I went in to see how bad it was and was pretty ugly to look at. I've never seen a more merciless blow in my entire life. He was lying on the floor, rolling in all directions, his face bloody, his nose was totally crushed, and his two eyes completely closed and swollen, already starting to black. I could see that two of his fingers were bent at weird angles. He also peed in his pants. I think he must have been missing teeth, but I didn't see any on the floor, and I couldn't see the inside of his mouth either, since his lips were all swollen. For having told my wife about it later, I know she wanted to. Breaking
was
every
beautiful,
part of his
kind,
body, focusing
and
more on
innocent.
his lungs. She
The
told
type of
me that
person
she
you'd
punched
never
his
suspect.
breath repeatedly
But
until
behind
his
her
legs
soft
couldn't take
voice
it
and
anymore,
gentle smile
and that she continued
hid
to
a
attack
deeply
him
disturbed
long
mind.
after he passed out.
Her
When my
obsession
wife
turns
got out
deadly
of the
when love
shower,
isn't
I
returned.
still didn't know what to
Her
do
laugh
with our
becomes
son.
unhinged.
I didn't know whether to
Her
call the
eyes turn
police
cold,
or an ambulance or
and her
take him to the
kindness
hospital myself.
becomes a trap.
I honestly had
She was
no idea what
beautiful,
to do.
kind,
After a
and
while I
innocent.
realized that I no longer
The type
cared
of
what could
person you'd
happen to
never
him,
suspect.
and we decided to let
But
him
behind
live
her
or die
soft
on his
voice
own.
and gentle smile,
There was a wall suite in the basement that we never
was
really
beautiful,
used.
kind,
My wife, daughter, and I
innocent.
moved there. We
The
just
type of person
allocated
you'd
the
never
top floor of
suspect.
the house to my son
But behind her
and locked
soft
everything
voice and
down.
gentle
His
smile
parents,
hid a
our
deeply
lives
disturbed
entirely.
mind.
There was plenty
Her
of food in
obsession
the
turns
upstairs
deadly when
cabinets,
love isn't
enough
returned.
to last 2 weeks or
Her
more.
laugh becomes
We had the
unhinged.
bathroom in the basement,
Her eyes
a
turn
small
cold,
kitchenette, and a separate
kindness
entrance, allowing us
becomes
to
a
stop
trap.
going
She was
upstairs.
beautiful.
We decided we were done with him. I figured we'd let his food run out and see what happens. Over the next week, we heard him move upstairs. I think he spent most of his time lying in bed recovering. I used to go to work staying alert in case he attacked me in the driveway, but he never did. My wife stayed at home with our daughter. She never took her eyes off her. One night we heard him go crazy, heating and destroying everything that might be in the house, but we didn't react. He never tried to get down or get near us. I think he was afraid my wife would finish the job after 3 weeks in the basement.
Things you shouldn't do
It
with a
had been
Ouija
several
board.
days since we
1.
had heard
Don't
anything
use the
coming from
Ouija board
above. I
alone.
ventured to the main
Always
floor of the
perform
house.
Ouija
The
board
place was
sessions in a
demolished
group
and there was no sign of my son. He was gone. It took months to repair the damage he had done. There was food and shit all over the walls, broken glass on the floor, holes in the drywall. He had demolished everything, ripped the lino in the corner of the kitchen and emptied the foam fire
Walking down a
extinguisher in the
dark
living
alley,
room. I was
alone.
grateful that he
The
didn't
only
burn
sound
the
is
house
your own
down. I
footsteps
still
echoing
don't
off
know
the
why
brick
he
walls.
didn't.
Suddenly
He
you hear a
had
noise.
no hesitation setting
Ever keep
fires in his
photos of
childhood.
deceased people?
Later,
Because
I
once a
feared
person
daily for
passes
our
away,
lives,
they no longer
expecting
belong
his
to this
return
world.
for vengeance.
Keeping photos of
3
those who
years
have left
after escaping, we finally felt a small sense of
Did
safety.
you know that
Born in
menstruating women should not
1971,
enter
my
sex?
son's
If you're a
destructive
woman
tales
and
feel a
unaware of this
lifetime away
information,
now.
it's
Yet the
important to pay
shadows
attention.
persist. So 70 this year, and my wife passed away from cancer in 2016. My daughter is 34 now. I moved in with her and her husband after my wife passed away. I have 2 little girls who are my greatest joy. I see a therapist twice. I saw him. He was lying on the floor, bloody broken. I haven't heard from him since he left over 30 years ago, but I don't want to. I carry a lot of guilt since that time and a lot of conflicting emotions. I didn't beat him myself, but I let it go, and I thought he deserved it. I didn't try to kill him, but I would have been happy for him to die. In a way, I hope he was able to overcome his demons and lead a normal life differently. If he wasn't able to change, if he stayed the way he used to be, then I really hope someone killed him. And it doesn't matter how it happened. I just wish he wasn't out there hurting other people yet. Chris and I had been working night shifts long enough to have our rhythm, but this night seemed weird from the start. The first time the black sedan appeared, the clock read 12 o'clock. I saw her walk around the parking lot slowly, then disappear, leaving dust and anguish behind her. It returned at 01:10, then again at 01:45, repeating the same slow circuit. I tried to see inside, but the windows were too tinted. When I mentioned it to Chris, he shrugged and said, "They may be lost. It's a Mayan highway." We got back to work, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was going to happen, and it happened. When I heard doors slam, I looked up to see two guys in black hoodies approaching. Something about the way they moved tightened my heart before I could alert Chris. They kicked down the door, make a noise, and you'll be... His wish, he held a crowbar, as if he knew how to use it. His accomplice pulled out a hunting knife. The box now screamed, startling me. I tried to open the crate, but my hands were shaking too much. Chris came out of the kitchen and instantly, gently, turned pale, and he says, "Hands in the air, take what you want." The guy with the knife jumped the counter and pushed me. I stumbled at Chris's feet as the thief took the money, grunting in disappointment. $340. Where's the rest? He demanded, scrutinizing everywhere, talking where I begin to decide, that's all we have. Please. We didn't stutter. He answered me with a slap so violently that my ears rang. Lie again and you'll see him whistle. Chris tried to intervene, but the man with the crowbar stopped him. The blow hit his ribs, knocking him to his knees before he could get up. The thieves pushed both of us to the back of the shop. He kept demanding money, shouting obscenities between blows. When he still couldn't find anything, the guy with the knife cracked. But before he could get to me, Chris pulled me and shoved me into the freezer. He slammed the door before I could react. "Chris," I threw myself against the door, but it wouldn't budge. Through the small steel window, I saw everything collapse. Chris was already bleeding from his ribs, but he stepped between the thieves and the freezer, yelling at them to back off, to leave us alone. They didn't listen. The crowbar guy hit him in the face, blowing his nose off. Still, he didn't let go. I don't remember ever feeling so helpless and scared. When they finally hit Chris hard enough in the temple, his hands let go, and I froze. I watched in horror as the guy with the knife broke free and headed for the freezer. Chris propelled himself off the ground and pinned him right in front of my window. He was on top, trying to control the type of blood all over his face and dripping onto the man beneath him. That's where the guy with the iron bar shot him in the back of Chris's skull. My best friend has become inert. The guy with the knife pushed him away, let him roll on his back before driving the blade into his stomach. It was a wet scream, broken and full of pain. The guy pulled out the knife and stabbed him again. Chris's body twitched and he made a choking sound. The third time the blade went in, Chris didn't make any noise. His hand just went up like he was trying to hold on to something. The blood was spilling on the floor so fast that I couldn't see it. The two guys realized what they were doing and ran away panicking. Chris was lying on his back, his arms were spread, and there were 3 holes in his torso. Blood gushed with every heartbeat. His mouth opened and closed, but only blood came out. He tried to breathe, but couldn't get any air. He turned his head toward the freezer, his hands slipping across the floor, leaving a trail of blood behind. He pressed his palm against the door, right where mine was. On the other side, 6 steel chutes separated us and I couldn't reach him. I saw his lips move. I couldn't hear him through the door, but I knew he was saying safe. Then his hands began to slide slowly. It left a long red trail on the white door. His eyes remained open, still in my direction, but they saw nothing. What I remember most is the cold seeping into my bones and staying there. How I screamed until I completely lost my voice. How did Chris's blood look almost black under the bright lights instead of being red like it should have been? I don't remember who found us or who called the police, but I remember begging the paramedics to save my friends, and massive internal bleeding were irreversible. In the end, Chris lost the battle. Police caught his thugs 6 hours later at a motel 2 cities away. From there, they still had the knife and $347 in cash. It was the price of my best friend's life. It's been 9 months, and I still can't get over it. I don't think I'll ever make it. Sometimes late at night, I still feel that icy cold. I see Chris's hands slide over the door, leaving this red trail behind. The storm hit around midnight, causing the McDonald's sign to wobble and the windows to shake. I worked at the drive, which meant wearing that stupid helmet and pretending to be happy. Night shifts weren't usually so quiet, but the storm had driven everyone away. I was wiping the beverage dispenser when the head that I may serve you. Crackles crossed the line before a male voice came through, as if someone was calling from the bottom of a swimming pool. Medium fries, vanilla milkshake. Okay, move forward to the first window. I looked at the camera screen, but I couldn't see a car or headlight. There was only the empty parking lot and the loudspeaker hammered by the pouring rain.
Bye. I got it.
Sir, are you still there? I waited about 30 seconds, then pressed the button again. Sir, if you have a problem with your again, but I still couldn't see it. Sarah, I called my manager. The drive-through camera's not working well. Someone's ordering, but I can't see anyone. Sarah stepped closer and squinted at the screen. Probably because of the storm. Go see what happens. I grabbed an umbrella and pushed open the side door. The rain soaked me instantly outside. The parking lot was empty except for our 2 cars. I headed for the driveway. Suddenly I spotted tire tracks. They looked fresh, crossing the puddles and leading from the speaker to the back of the parking lot, but they didn't turn toward the service window like they should have instead. They went straight behind the trash cans into the forest, as if the car had gone into the darkness and disappeared. I hesitated for a moment, but I couldn't ignore the tracks. I followed them deeper into the woods. Headlights flickered through branches barely visible in the rain and trees. A silver sedan was wrapped around a huge tree trunk. The whole front had crashed like a tin can. Steam rose from the destroyed engine, and the windshield was covered in spiderweb cracks. I pulled out my phone with a shaking hand and turned on the flashlight. The driver was still in his seat, slumped against the door, eyes closed in a side of his skull. Fragments of bone protruded at angles that made my stomach turn. And I could see his brain matter through his bloody hair. He was swimming in a pool of his own blood. His jaw was barely attached by shreds of flesh. My God, I whispered as I backed away. My hands were shaking, and I could hear my heart pounding in my ears before I could call for help. The women lit up, blinding me, as if someone had just put them in the spotlight. Then a voice whistled directly into my ear, so close that I felt a cold breath on the back of my neck. Did you forget my order? I turned around, but saw no one behind me, only trees, rain, and darkness. When I looked at the car again, the dead man was sitting upright, eyes wide open, staring at me through the shattered windshield, while blood flowed from his shattered skull. I felt he was neither dead nor alive. I ran through the woods panting with fear and shock. I didn't stop until I walked through the back door of McDonald's and slammed the door while I stood by the locked door, peering into the darkness. Police arrived about 15 minutes later with paramedics and a fire truck. I guided them into the woods, though all in me wanted to stay inside where they were clear and safe. The car was exactly where I'd left it, still wrapped around that tree, but the headlights were dim again. Now the horn had stopped. The driver was slumped against the door, his eyes closed, just as I had found him the first time. One of the paramedics checked his pulse and shook his head. He's been dead for at least 4 hours, maybe plus 4 hours. My voice came out, higher than I wanted. But I heard him. He spoke to me, son. Given the damage and body temperature, he must have hit that tree around 8 o'clock tonight. The cop shrugged, but the headlights came on. Short circuit due to accident. And he explained, when going around the wreck, it happens sometimes. The battery still has a little juice. It makes the lights flash randomly. I insisted that I had spoken to him, but they all looked at me like I was crazy before they resumed their photos and measurements, and then loaded the body onto a stretcher. I saw them slip him into a black body bag, and the last thing I saw was his ravaged face, disappearing behind the plastic. The cop came up and told me the guy's name was Robert James, 42, insurance salesman from Seattle. He was driving when the storm broke, had to lose control on the wet road and ended up in our woods. They told me it happens more often than you think. No one heard the crash because of the thunder. No one knew he was there until I found him. I resigned the next day. I told them I was going back to school, needed to focus on classes, any excuse that didn't make me look crazy. But I know what I saw, what I heard. Sometimes late at night when it's raining hard, I hear this voice in my head. You forgot my order. I was 17 years old that November, working the closing department at McDonald's on Granville Street in Vancouver. It was a Friday, almost 11:30 p.m., and the rain was pouring down. My colleague Aria was mopping by the toilet while I wiped the tables, both of them staring at the clock. Another 30 minutes, and we could close. That is when a man is whole. At first, he looked like an ordinary lady. Might be a little stoned considering the way he stood at the entrance fixing his clothes to me. A dark hoodie and washed out gin was soaked and clinging to his body. But what caught my attention was what he was holding in his hand. It was a handmade doll about 30 centimeters long, with button eyes and brown wool hair tied in a messy ponytail. She was wearing a McDonald's mini uniform. I can help you. I managed to let he known. Aria looked up from her mop. Are you ordering something or what? He ignored her completely. I love looking at you, Anna. He took a step forward, the water splashing in his shoes. You always tie your hair the same way. You always clean the table from the left. You're so simple and predictable. It's so cute. My heart stopped. He knew my name and my habits. My heart skipped a beat when I saw him press the knife against the doll's belly. You know how long I've been waiting for this moment. His voice broke all his nights in East Easting's third-floor corner apartment. You'd better close your bedroom window, my beauty. My legs almost gave out. Dave? Aria cried, backing toward the kitchen. You have to understand, Anna. The blade sank deeper into the doll's cloth belly. You belong to me from the first time I saw you 6 months ago. I knew to girl. Knife in one hand, doll's head in the other, red syrup dripping everywhere. For a second, no one moved. Then the sirens started screaming outside, getting closer, towards the door, but they can't keep me away. He clutched the doll's head against him, staining his wish red. The police came in just as he reached the gates. He didn't resist. He stood still in the rain while hear anything in the chaos, but I could have read her lips, eyes closed. You're mine, Anna. You're mine. The police revealed to me that this man had been stalking me for a month. He watched me secretly during my services, maybe even followed me home at night. His name was Marcus Hendrick. Schizophrenic, no medication, no family. That was 10 months ago. My hair blonde. I took a simple job in a bookstore where I never had to work evenings, but some nights I wake up at 3 in the morning, convinced I hear breathing at my window, convinced I see someone in the shadows across the street. The worst part is knowing he's still out there in a cell somewhere, counting the days, thinking and planning, because distances and walls and bars don't do anything to people like Marcus. They don't forget, and they know how to wait beyond eternity. Leslie and I went to Disneyland to have some quiet fun. We rode Space Mountain 3 times in a row, ate our peas in churros and laughed till our faces hurt. It was the first time I had seen Leslie laugh so much in a long time. It felt good to see her laugh. Our day was going well until we spotted this strange man in front of Sleeping Beauty's castle. He was disguised as Judge Claude Frollo of the Hunchback of Notre Dame. The costume was perfect, down to the layered dress, the thick hat, and even the little embroidered details on her sleeves. But what struck me the most wasn't the costume. It was his disturbing expressions. He licked his lips continually, his eyes looking hollow and sunken, as if he hadn't slept in weeks. And every few seconds he was smiling at random girls for no reason. Leslie and I were passing in front of him when he spoke to him. "You should be careful. Beauty is a dangerous gift, especially when desired by evil men." I found his imitation creepy yet impressive. Leslie laughed nervously, but the guy stared at her for an unsettlingly long time before vanishing into the crowd. Initially, I dismissed him as a hardcore Disney enthusiast, but over time, his presence was everywhere. At first, I thought it was just a coincidence. He was standing near the entrance to the haunted mansion, a few rows behind. I showed it as a joke. "Your biggest fan is still following us." Leslie doesn't match. This time she just looked over her shoulder and said, "What a shady guy." And she was right. He wasn't looking around, wasn't checking his phone, wasn't doing anything normal. He was looking at her. Even when we changed zones, he always reappeared a few steps away. "Let's go to another section," I say, trying to sound calm. Maybe he's just weird, not dangerous. After the Splash Mountain ride, Leslie wanted to change. His shirt was soaked. She went to the ladies' room near the shop, while I waited outside on my phone, almost forgetting about the guy dressed as Judge Frollo. Suddenly, I heard Leslie screaming from the toilet. His voice was loud enough to make the people around him look up. Seconds later, Leslie burst out, pale, shaking, still in her wet clothes. He was inside. He was there, looking at me, smiling. She screamed. I dropped my phone. "What?" I saw his face in the mirror behind me. He said something, but I couldn't. He was smiling. I walked right in and found the guy standing in the girls' bathroom with that same unhealthy smile, punching him and screaming obscenities. Blood splattered his chin, but he didn't defend himself. He was just laughing, laying there while I hit him. It was not a normal laugh. It was deep and guttural, like the sound of a church organ vibrating underground. The more I hit him, the louder his laughter got. People were screaming. Now security was running, trying to get me out of the way. I remember a guard yelling at me to stop, saying the man was bleeding, but he didn't feel anything. He was smiling through the blood in Red Way firm. Even when they dragged her out, he looked at Leslie, not me, and said, "You can't hide your beauty, my dear. Not from eyes that see through skin." Then he laughed again as he took it away. That sound still plays in my head. Not like a human laugh, but an echo from a hollow place, much deeper than his chest. They took him and handed over to the police. But I noticed their confusion because when they checked his identity, they found nothing. No wallet, no phone, not even a ticket. They should never have been here. We stayed until closing, sitting by Main Street, too shocked to move. Fireworks went off in a moment. Everyone around was cheering and filming, but all I could hear was Leslie sobbing. She rested her head on my trembling shoulder. He wasn't normal, she whispered. I felt it when he looked at me, as if he knew, as if he had already done it. I didn't know what to say. A week later, Leslie and I returned home. We didn't talk about Disneyland. It felt cursed, as if the place had revealed something rotten to us. Beneath the smiles, I was skipping when Leslie suddenly gasped. Jamie, step back. We saw that man again, that same face, the one disguised as a freelock, but without the costume. This time, his mugshot filled the screen, pale, tired. But it was him. The announcer's voice was calm, but icy. Authorities identified the man arrested at Disneyland last week as Richard Hale, 43, a repeat offender known for stalking women in public places like theme parks, restaurants, and shopping malls. Police say Hale often disguised himself as a character or employee to blend in with the crowd. Before following her victims into isolated areas, Leslie covered her mouth, muttering, "Oh my God." Investigators had searched his apartments and discovered hundreds of printed photos of women at Disneyland in shopping malls and cafes, all taken without their knowledge. Each photo had disturbing captions written underneath it in red ink. Hale reportedly told investigators he admired Judge Claude Frello, claiming he was misunderstood in his own words. Why are there only Disney princesses? Why not Disney villains? The room fell silent at the
Genius little
TV.
tricks.
The
1.
reporter
Got a wood
moved on to
splinter in your
another
finger.
story.
Here's what my
But I
doctor told
couldn't
me to
help
do. Rub a
replaying
bit of
that
cooking oil on the
unhealthy
spot.
laugh in
Then
my
use a
head,
syringe
that
to pull the splinter
inhuman
out. The
guttural
whole process
sound.
takes only 10
He
seconds.
wasn't a
2.
ghost.
When your
He
fingers
wasn't
get
a
stuck
demon.
together with
He was
super glue,
worse.
just pour on
He
some
was
salt
real.
and white vinegar to dissolve it. Your fingers
never
will
thought I
separate
would be the
easily.
kind of
3.
person
You
to
should clean
visit
your faucet
Disneyland.
regularly. Apply
Only
some
my little
toothpaste to the
sister
filter
Emily
tip.
always
Reinstall it
wanted
and
to
run
go.
the water.
But
It'll
that
remove
day
most
never
of the
came.
bacteria.
A
4.
drunk
If your
driver
teeth
took her
look yellow
life
even
last
after
December
brushing
when
daily,
she was
try this
only 9 years
dentist-approved
old.
method. Add
I
some
still
white vinegar
remember
to
the
warm
siren
water.
shovel,
Dip your
the
toothbrush in it.
sanitized
Then
smell of
sprinkle
the
salt and
hospital room.
toothpaste on the
I didn't
bristles.
cry
Keep
right
brushing this
away.
way and your
I
teeth
just
will
stopped
whiten.
feeling
5.
anything. But when I found, so I decided to go. For her, it was a sunny after 12 p.m. when I arrived, and everything was exactly as she had imagined. Music played, children laughed, balloons floated in the sky, and I wandered aimlessly. Every smile I saw reminded me of what I had lost. I sat by the fountain in front of Fantasyland, eating a churrod, whispering to the wind, "That's all for you, Emily." I was drowning in my grief when I noticed a man near the carousel. He was a tall, lanky guy with stringy hair. He pretended to check his phone but wasn't looking at the screen. His eyes were fixed on a little girl. She couldn't have been more than 8 years old. She jumped up and down laughing as her parents pushed a stroller a few steps away. The man began to follow them, deliberately blending into the crowd. Every time the girl turned around, he looked away, pretending to take pictures or adjust his hat. A shiver went down my spine. I told myself not to jump to conclusions. People look weird all the time. Maybe he was just waiting for someone. A few minutes later, I looked again and saw the man talking to the girl while handing her an ice cream. I was too far away to hear, but I could see that the girl was interested in what he was saying. His parents were distracted, trying to calm the baby down. It's none of my business. I thought to myself, there are cameras, security, people everywhere. But I saw him grab her wrist and start walking away. As soon as the girl realized that the man was taking her away from her parents, she began to cry. But the music and the chaos drowned out his voice. His cries simply dissolved into the noise. He started dragging her to the trail behind Ombo's attraction. I was now certain that the man had bad intentions before he disappeared. I saw her face, eyes wide open. At that moment, I saw Emily, those same, desperate eyes she must have had at the time of the accident, calling for someone who never came. Something in me cracked. I got up and ran faster than ever in my life. My heart was beating like a drum in my ears. I didn't even think about it. I just jostled people for hours on end. Arriving at the corner, I saw the man slamming the little girl against a wall. His belt was half undone. His face had gone from calm to something menacing. For a moment, I froze. Every cell in my body screamed with rage. Then the girl moaned, "Please don't hurt me," and all I could see was Emily, sitting on her bed, asking me to promise her she'd be safe. As I grew older, I could no longer stand still. I threw myself at this monster. The man turned around, surprised, just as I hit her. We both hit the ground hard. I don't remember my words, just the sound of stitches, the taste of blood in my mouth. I hit him until I bruised my knuckles. He tried to fight back, but the rage and grief had made me stronger than ever. I yelled at him, words that didn't even make sense. I just knew this monster wasn't going to hurt her. Not today, ever. When face unrecognizable, the guards pulled me away from him, shouting questions I didn't understand. The little girl ran to one of them sobbing. I was shaking, covered in sweat and dust. My hands were shaking so hard that I had to press them against my knees to calm them down. Later, when everything calmed down, one of the guards led the girl to me. She had bandages on her knees, and her pink backpack was torn. She looked at me with her big, grateful eyes, the same color as Emily's. Then she reached out and took mine. "Thank you," she whispered. I didn't even know what to say. I just knelt down to keep up with him. "You're safe now," I managed to articulate. She suddenly squeezed me tight, as if she was afraid to let go, and something broke inside me. I felt heat on my cheeks and realized I wasn't crying. Silent weeping, broken, trembling sobs, months of guilt and... With a sudden surge of pain, I held her like my own sister, as if by saving her, I had finally... The police took the man away. One of the officers tapped me on the shoulder. "You did well, son," he said, but I could hardly hear it, for in the distance, through the crowd and the lights, I thought I saw a little figure near the carousel, in a white dress, with mini ears. For a moment, I saw Emily. She smiled at me and then disappeared. I don't know if it was real or just my imagination, but I felt it there in the laughter of the children, in the breeze that carried the smell of cotton candy. That evening, as the fireworks exploded above the castle, I was sitting on a bench. Tears flowed, but they didn't hurt anyone. Somewhere, beyond the lights and stars, I knew she was smiling, proud that her big brother had finally found the courage to be her hero. Even though it was a little late, and for the first time since his death, I smiled back at him. I still get chills when I think of that day. It was supposed to be magic, a perfect Saturday at Disneyland for my daughter, but here she had been talking about it for months. She was 9 years old, and at that age, everything still seems big and possible. She had saved her pocket money to buy Minnie's ears. That morning, she wore them proud. It was early, maybe a little after that hour. The sky was soft and golden, the traffic flowing. I remember thinking how good it was to give her something normal, joyful. We had been on the road for a while and everything seemed normal. Suddenly I noticed this woman at the bend in the road ahead. At first she looked like an artist, someone going to an event. A woman in a mini suit on the side of the road, waving her arms as if to ask for help. But as we approached, I saw him more clearly. His suit was dirty and torn. She wasn't wearing a mask, but mini ears and weird makeup on her face. His smile was too big for his face. I slowed down a bit, but here, pointing through the window, Mommy Minnie is lost. The woman approached, slightly dragging one foot, her red polka dot dress, standing. Her voice was monotonous. When I rolled down the window an inch, "You're going to Disneyland," and she said, "You can take me." I forced a small smile. "I'm sorry, we're in a hurry, I can't," before I could finish. The back door slammed open. I realized what a big mistake I had made by forgetting to lock it. The woman slid in next to Messi, the smell of his sweat filling the air in the car. I turned around to scream, but she already had a knife to Messi's throat and turned left onto the dirt road. My hands froze on the steering wheel. Messi started. It almost broke me, sweetie. "Mommy's here. Watch the road, Mommy." The woman's hand trembled as she held the knife. She was breathing heavily, almost gasping. We drove deeper into the woods until we saw a rotten cabin leaning on its side, covered with ivy. The woman pointed her finger at Minnie's house. "You'll love it," slowly, still holding the knife. For a moment, she turned toward the house as if to check so hard I could barely hold the right steering wheel. We pulled onto the main road, tires screeching, and I drove until I saw other cars, normal people. I pulled up near a gas station, jumped out and ran to the back. But here was curled up, crying, hysterically with glass in her hair, but fortunately not injured. I took her and held her close. She was shaking, panting between her sobs. "Mommy, I love Minnie more." It broke me. I couldn't say anything. Later, they took our statements, searched the area, but couldn't find the woman. They said he might be a vagabond. Someone stoned, unstable. But when I told them about the costume, how she seemed to know this hidden dirt road, they just looked. Macy didn't want to sleep in her room. She kept repeating that she saw Minnie outside the window. Every noise made her jump. I slept next to her for weeks. After that, a few days later, out of morbid curiosity, I passed this stretch of highway again in broad daylight. I wanted the spot where I've first seen it. Something caught my eye. Minnie Mouse's red ears lay in the dirt by the shoulder, half buried, the same kind Macy wore that morning. She still had hers, which meant this one wasn't hers. I didn't stop. I just kept driving. To this happened if I hadn't left. But sometimes when I drive at night and see someone on the side of the road, my body freezes. I think of that voice, that flat, emotionless voice that says, "Are you going to Disneyland?" But here is bigger now. We haven't been back to Disneyland yet. She doesn't even want to go. She says it's no longer magic. And frankly, I understand. Because for me, this stretch of highway, this line with its light signs and palm trees, will never again be the road to Disneyland. It became the road where we almost died. I was 15 years old visiting my grandparents before Halloween in Grange Hart and had been praising this fair for days. On Halloween night, we walked to the fairground on the edge of town. The place was lit with flickering torches and orange garlands. It bathed everything in an eerie glow. The air was full of smoke and fire and smell and hay and spicy cider. I have to admit, the atmosphere was really cool. There were bizarre trinket stands, cart rides in fake cemeteries, and crazy costumes. Evan quickly ditched me to pick up girls dressed as Disney princesses while I was walking around alone. That's when I felt a tap on the shoulder. I turned and almost jumped. Behind me stood a clown straight out of a nightmare. His suit was worn and patched as if it had been rotting in a cellar for decades. The makeup was thick and cracked, with a smile painted far too wide. Her pale blue eyes seemed to count every time I blinked. Anything. Just stand there, holding out this disgusting candy. As I walked away quickly, I found Evan near the haunted house. He was always trying to impress his daughters dressed as princesses. Man, he one super creepy clown towards games. Really deranged kind. A clown is probably just Friendo. One of the geeks saw him near the walk, in a cart or prowling toward the campfire. As soon as I stared at him, he did pebble. Hey, Friendo, catch. He threw it at the clan. I saw the stone hit his forehead. Blood immediately ran down her face, mixing with the white makeup. Friendo didn't scream or grimace. He didn't even touch the wound. He stared at us for a few seconds, letting the blood soak his clothes before he melted into the crowd. Damn, Evan, why did you do that? Don't worry, he'll get over it. But I felt like we just screwed up.
The sun was below the horizon, casting the
By
shadow
midnight, the party was over. Families were gone, leaving teens and drunken adults staggering. Evan, tired of flirting, suggested we go back and insisted on cutting through the cornfield behind the fair. It's faster. 8, he said. A thick fog limited visibility to a few meters. The ears of corn rustled above us and laughed like a gargle. Plus, it echoed in the field, somewhere behind us. Did you hear that? The laughter came closer. We turned and I saw a shape in the fog.
one could no longer support.
Tall and strange, he staggered towards us. Between the ranks, nothing, I exclaimed. I or you? Dry blood blackened his face. He held a shiny object. As smile seemed to widen, covering his entire face. Run, Evans whispered, and we ran into the corn.
Chilled my blood. The dinner started with laughter.
Whipped by the rods, behind Frendo's laughter intensified. He seemed to enjoy the situation. I could hear his horrible laugh approaching, moving closer. Exhausted, cotton-legged, I kept running this way. Eva grabbed me and pulled me to the right. One emerged from the cornfield onto the road, sprinting towards the city lights.
My father's voice
I glanced over and saw Friendo at the edge of the field, jumped his head. He wasn't chasing us anymore. He just watched the fog envelop him as if he were part of it. We ran to my grandparents' house, locked up, and spent the night in the living room, jumping at the slightest noise. Grandfather found us in the morning, the air of having seen a ghost when we told him, his face to pale.
A storm.
Avoid the harvest festival now, and he says softly. Some traditions here are better left alone. I don't know who Friendo really was, what he became, but I do know one thing. I will never celebrate Halloween at Granger Hollow again, because he dragged me to that Halloween party against my will, knowing that I hated parties and crowds and all that cinema. Julia will be there, he said with a wink as he approached. My heart sank. Why are you telling me this now? Come on, man, she's cute and clearly interested. Interested was an understatement. Julia had been stalking me for months. It started when I had the misfortune of being polite to her at Starbucks. Then she would pop up everywhere I went, leaving creepy stuff. Dead birds in black cloth, jars of earth and hair. When I told her to let go, she smiled and talked about the good moon. This girl was completely crazy, but I couldn't let her run my life. I figured I'd enjoy the party, which I did, until I saw her again. She was on the other side, dressed as tent glad weapons. Her makeup looked like rotting skin. Cracked gray, glued to the bone, hollow eyes, red lenses, glowing like embers in the dim light, stringy hair on his shoulders. Could be a wig with lipstick smeared at the corner. I tried to ignore him, but I could feel his eyes following me everywhere. Around 12 o'clock, she cornered me near the kitchen. "Dance with me, Eric." She purred hoarsely. "Stay away. You can't run from fate. You're crazy. Get treated." She wrinkled her nose but pulled back, her lips moving, muttering to themselves. I didn't stay. Kyle was too drunk to see anything. I left discreetly 3 blocks from my house. A street light flickered. I ignored that and kept walking. But at the turn, there she was, this Gladys tan suit, rotten makeup and stringy hair. Instead, not just the the whole eye, like ink had been poured into it. "We have to finish that," she says. "There's nothing to finish. Leave me alone."
I knew she loved him too, but that didn't
I
stop
tried
her.
to pass, but she grabbed my wrist. His skin was cold, his grip strong enough to leave bruises. You have no choice but to whistle. Before I could react, she grabbed a handful of my hair. Pain shot through my skull as she pulled, ripping strands of hair out. "What are you doing there?" She took out a twisted piece of wood full of thorns and wrapped my hair around it. Her voice deepened as if something was speaking through her. "You belong to me," Eric whispered, her warm breath against my ear. "Body and soul." The twig warmed near my chin before it burned. She broke it in two, still singing. The air got thick. "You're crazy," I shouted, pushing her away. Finally, she stumbled without falling. "I'd rather die than be with you," I screamed. "It can be fixed." She laughed, attacking me with the twig, thorn towards my eyes. I ran into the street, my sneakers pounding on the concrete. I could hear those footsteps, but it wasn't a normal run. It was a strange rhythm, like she was dancing. I looked back and immediately regretted it. She was moving abnormally, arms too loose, head tilted at an unsettling angle. But she was catching up with me. I cut through an alley, skipping bag and avoiding trash. Out of breath, I could hear those crazy jumps and laughs getting closer. When I looked back, she was 10 feet away, with this awful stretched smile. "Eric, you can't run away forever," she screamed. I stormed out of the alley onto the main street. My building was still 2 blocks away. My legs would tense up, but as soon as I slowed down, I could hear those good and those songs coming closer to the corner. I glanced back. Julia was only a few steps away, her hands outstretched toward me. I could feel the warmth of her body mingling with mine before she caught me. I dug my elbow into his ribs. Strong. I felt him recoil. Hearing a crack, without looking twice, I sprinted away, as if my life depended on it. Maybe it was the step. I reached my building, slammed the door, and put all the locks on. I barely slept that night. As soon as I closed my eyes, I could see so many Gladys smiling. The next morning, Kyle broke the news to me. They found Julia unconscious on the sidewalk around 3 a.m. with a severe head injury. At the hospital, she remembered nothing. Not even his name or address. The weird thing, Kyle says, is all her hair strewn where they found her. human hair, and burnt wood. I touched my aching skull where she had pulled my hair out. Doctors said Julia's amnesia could be permanent. I feel a little guilty for pushing her, but mostly I was relieved. If she didn't remember me, I never thought I was afraid of my phone, but every Snapchat notification freaks me. Swung, they beat you up. So we acted as if nothing had happened. A week before Halloween, we saw a story about a party with free drinks, so my friend and I went. I picked it up in my old one. Corolla him. In basketball, me in a simple vampire outfit. The party was wild. Lots of people, most of them in disguise. Music blaring, smell of weed. Alcohol everywhere. We were hanging out by the buffet talking to high school buddies. When I saw my friend tense up, I followed his gaze and saw a group of older guys. Mistress Ton stared at me with eyes. And he fell. I wanted to help, but someone held me back. I had to stand there and watch the guys beat him up. The sound of fists and feet hitting him was Preston. That arrogant jerk stared at me with a smirk as he threw. Your turn, vampire. Before walking away nonchalantly, as if nation's empire. These facts are taken from a real drama in Queen Creek, Arizona, a suburb southeast of Phoenix. On October 28, 2023, 16-year-old Preston Lord was attacked at a Halloween party. The party announced on Snapchat promised free costumes and alcohol. More than 200 teenage police found Preston seriously injured. He died 2 days later. Vigils have all entered pleas of not guilty as the trial set for July 2025 awaits further review due to the large volume of evidence. Between 4th and 2nd grade, I was rumors that he denied. It made me laugh because we only knew each other online. At first everything was fine, but little by little I began to feel uneasy during our conversations. I began to catch him in little lies, which annoyed me. So I decided to distance myself and stop talking to him. A few months later, when we were no longer in touch, Peter sent me a message out of nowhere. He told me he was considering changing high schools to come to mine, so he could benefit from state tuition. His plan? Living alone, getting by financially while finishing high school. My stomach got knotted. All of this seemed very disturbing and out of nowhere. I tried to stay calm and told him his plan was insane. It was strange that my high school was chosen. He insisted it was a pure coincidence and that everything was going to work out. I was still hoping he was bluffing, but shortly after, tickets to visit my high school and stay in my city. Fear took over me when I realized that Peter was totally serious. And that he had developed an unhealthy obsession with me. He wasn't bluffing. From the airport, he suggested we meet during his stay. I refused. Later, he posted more stories showing him taking a tour of my high school, filming and taking pictures, probably in the hope that I would see them. Luckily that day, I was at home with pneumonia. So I didn't have to confront by refusing to see him and keeping quiet. He'd clearly the right plan. I don't know if he really did, but I never ran into him on campus. A few months later, he found out I had a boyfriend. He contacted me on Skype for the first time in 2 years. Do you think he can protect you out of your eyes and point out all the bad decisions I've made? And you'd be right. But I sincerely believe that today we'll call him Joshua. It was the last day before the holidays. We hung out with a group, we laughed, we had fun. Then we added on Facebook. He didn't write to me right away. It was only in the middle of the holidays that he sent me a message, a simple greeting, just to check in on me. I was very lonely at the time and hadn't had a real friend since elementary. I already had a boyfriend in Charlie, and Joshua knew it very well. He spent his time saying that Charlie didn't deserve me, that he didn't respect me, or that he said bad things about me behind. Joshua was texting me like, if you were really my friend, you'd let me join. Then 30 minutes. I had found a super guild that raided twice a week. Everything was going very well until he learned through a mutual interrupt our raids by landing on the vocal and blasting the music. He got kicked out and frankly, he had been looking for it. After that, I decided I'd forgotten one crucial detail. He knew where I lived. I had been avoiding him for a month, spending time with my guild. I had no desire to see him. Small balcony that is easy to climb thanks to the legend hose. I have already sneaked in there myself. I often leave the window, teeth clenched, shaking, to my room. It became a because you were 2 fingers. Not even the usual background noise you get when someone's microphone is on, but then I started to freak out a little and I said, "Who is it?" And suddenly the sound came on. I have to say it worked. I was petrified. So this time I replied there wasn't enough light in the room to discern anything. I figured I was getting paranoid and the sound was coming from the headphones. So I turned back to my screen and there I saw a little faint light on the beautiful Skype video. It seemed to be slowly getting bigger and bigger. I approached guys. Many of my friends outright hide their gender with a neutral nickname, no profile picture, and never speak in vocal if there are guys around. And since through Discords to play and chat, you can't get random messages from complete strangers like that. Unless you share a server. And since I'm on a lot of servers related to the games I like, I sometimes get DMs that are not clear. My favorite game is Dead by Daylight. For those who don't know, it's an asymmetrical horror game where one person plays a killer and the others have to survive. Only the killer, never the survivor, and they become ultra bullshit. That's how I came across a player who played the clown on King Fanboy Friend. My mother loves to remember that I was traumatized as a child by a clown at a birthday party. And in Dead by Daylight, the clown is a real horror, face dripping with dirty makeup, big belly, human finger hanging on his belt as a trophy. Anyway, when this player started playing with our band, I wasn't hot, but my buddies loved him. He played the clown vocal roles. It was pretty funny as long as it wasn't me chasing him at the end of a session when everyone was like, okay, whether it was real was already creepy, but what really upset me was that he had clearly typed, erased, rewritten for several minutes. Finally, he joins the vocal and direct. He says, "Ruby is here tonight." Except that I was already in the vocal. He knew very well that I was there, so he asked that letting the others escape without pressure. The first time the others didn't notice. In the third set, they started capturing, "Hey man, stop tunneling Ruby's condition," after a particularly disgusting round. I begged my buddies to fire him. They eventually left him. I've read it, but it was like an accident. Know what city you live in? I could meet you tomorrow. I'm not sure I'll hunt you down in the game. This is probably the most terrifying experience I've ever had online. So, a piece of advice, especially if you're a girl, I said like a failed horror movie. But sometimes some stories stood out without any supernatural elements, just realistic and terrifying. There's one as his mother sometimes went out with men, hoping to find a father-in-law for him. That night she had a date, and since her grandmother was Nothing strange, it was a ground floor apartment, no need to climb. But pulling back the curtain hanging on the door. Fortunately they let him in. He told them tram week at grandma's. It had been taken recently, his mother knew. Because she had a new haircut or a new moment. The obsessed guy couldn't resist anymore and he came back. They seemed to find some peace when they learned that a man's not the idea of ghosts or monsters, but real-life horrors that stay with you. I tried to see inside, but the windows were too tinted. When I mentioned it to Chris, he shrugged, tightened my heart before I could alert Chris. They kicked down the door, make a noise and in the air, take what you want. The guy with the knife jumped the counter and pushed me. I stumbled at Chris's feet as the thieves see him whistle. Chris tried to intervene, but the man with the crowbar stopped him. The blow hit his ribs. I threw myself against the door, but it wouldn't budge. Through the small steel window, I saw everything in the temple. His hands let go, and I froze. Let him roll on his back before driving the blade into his stomach. See it. The two guys realized what they were doing and ran away panicking. Chris was lying on his back, his arms against the door, right where mine was. On the other side, 6 steel chutes separated us and I couldn't reach him. I saw his lips move. I couldn't hear him through the door, but I nearly lost my voice. How did Chris's blood look almost black under the bright lights instead of being red like it should have? There they still had the knife and $347 in cash. It was the price of my best friend's life. It's been 9 months and pretending to be happy. Night shifts weren't usually so quiet, but the storm had driven everyone away. The camera screen, that I couldn't see a car or headlight. There was only the empty parking lot and the loudspeaker hammering, but I can't see anyone. Sarah stepped closer and squinted at the screen. Turned toward the service window like they should have instead. They went straight behind the trash cans into the forest, crashed like a tin can. Steam rose from the destroyed engine, and the windshield would see his brain matter through his bloody hair. He was swimming in a pool of his own blood, death on the back of my neck. Did you forget my order? I turned around, but saw no one behind the door of McDonald's and slammed it. I told the manager everything. Sarah made the call while I stood by the lock, bumped against the door. His eyes closed, just as I had found him the first time. One of the paramedics checked accident, and he explained, when